Thank you. So you guys know the drill by now. I'm going to run through a couple announcements, then give you his formal bio, and then the floor is his. So if you would all please silence your cell phones. You can keep them on because we do ask that you tweet, Instagram, Facebook. You can. We're taking questions through Poll Everywhere, Twitter, and actual hand raising. You could pick up your passport stickers after the presentation. Photographs will be taken, so if you don't want your picture taken, please move to the back now and see me afterwards. And that's all the announcements. So here's a little bit about Steve. I hope I cut it down quite a bit, so hopefully I didn't cut the good stuff out. But Steve is the president and general manager of RDK Management. He's responsible for managing all aspects of the joint venture, including leading faster development innovation cycles and managing relationships between a diverse set of licenses such as OEMs, MVPDs, and other key vendors and suppliers. Prior to Comcast, he worked at Raytheon, performing engineering and international business roles associated with multiple technological joint ventures, which include extended travel in Japan and China. And Steve holds an MBA from Drexel and a BS in electrical engineering from Penn State. So join me in welcoming Steve to the floor.
All right, I guess we'll is this on good? All right. So maybe I'll expand on that a little bit. So I work for Comcast, and within Comcast, I lead up a strategic development group. And also we run two companies. One is the RDK LLC, which is a joint venture with Comcast, Time Warner, and Liberty Global. And we run a software company. And the other one is a company called CAL, which is a content protection conditional access company that keeps content safe in the United States, Canada, and worldwide. And we license that out, and that's a joint venture with Motorola/Aris and Comcast, and we also license Cisco technology out. So I come from this perspective of you have Comcast, a large company, and I've run product development, business development, and certain aspects in Comcast. And then also we run these two companies with a P&L. We report up to a board of directors. It is not Comcast. They're separate companies, and we have employees and offices internationally in India, in Ireland, in the United States, Canada, and in Asia. So what I want to do is kind of provide you guys some value. And so in order to do that, I really don't know your structure and what you're focusing on. So if you guys could ask questions, keep me on track, whether it's some of the hosts here, whether it's you guys, I'm fine with just stopping and say, how is that relevant to X or Y or Z? So feel free to ask a question and feel free to stop me at any point. Again, the breadth of what we could go over is I've been involved with the content side of the business, such as cutting the business deals with all the major video providers in the United States and worldwide, all the way ranging from technologies of conditional access DRM, to keep that video safe, and again, the software, and then strategic business development with companies such as Google, such as Samsung, and then small companies that we either acquire, partner with, joint venture, et cetera. So it's a wide breadth. Feel free to ask any questions. So the directive that I was provided is maybe I could provide some value of a large company perspective of innovation and how maybe Comcast and other companies have done that. And I've been involved with startups either on the boards of public or private companies going into those stages, and advisors, et cetera. So we can go from a large company perspective to a small company perspective. And then also I was asked if I could provide a little value or potential value to people who are graduating, going into the workforce. Do you go to a startup, medium size, large size, if you want to be cutting edge innovation, and if you want to have some fun and potentially with a startup get some equity upside, et cetera, and maybe have some security with a larger company versus going into a startup. So that's what I'm going to focus on. If you want to send me on any other direction, just let me know. So first of all, actually the things I really like to talk about is behind me, but we're going to focus on here. This is from a ski trip last weekend. We were up in Alaska, so we had a good time. That's us dropped off by the helicopter at the top of the peak. So afterwards, if you want to talk about that, I'll spend all day on that. So kind of back to business. One of my kids in my bag coming down here decided to borrow my laptop. So these are my PowerPoints and these are my notes. So a first couple of things that the students going into the world these days, I would really step back. I know you have to get a job and there's some revenue, some pay associated with that. And so, yeah, that's pretty normal. But I would really say you're at the time of your life, you're not locked down into things. You should really step out, take some risks, think out of the box, change the box, and be willing to have some fun with what's going on out there in the media and in the entertainment, in the high-tech world. I mean, you guys are coming out with a great education from the university. You should really use it and be innovative if you want to. There's a lot of opportunities out there. Then there is the reality of going to a big company, and then there is the reality of going to a startup. I can get to those in a little bit, but some have security, some have pretty good pay, and the others have upsides such as equity, et cetera. So some of the innovative things that Comcast has done, so you have a large company, it's over $50 billion in revenue. So how do you get innovation in a big company? So some of the ways that we've brought innovation and changed the way we do business, besides offering just video, data, voice, and other aspects, is we take an idea, we take a look X amount of years out, and we decide if we want to take a separate team to go run that and not get bogged down the way you do business and all the people who say, hey, that won't work, that's going to be hard to do, maybe we shouldn't do this. You get a team, you build them. Sometimes we take them off site and we give them one objective to do. One of the things that we've done recently, actually was started around 4 or 5 years ago, was that we saw the need, got to remember 5 years ago, cell phones weren't as big as they are with video, and everybody was doing video on the web, but high quality video really wasn't out there yet. And we said, we need to make a transition to the IP video world, whether it's over our networks, outside of our networks, et cetera. So we created a team, it built up to over 300 people, to go solve this situation or tie into this opportunity. So they actually were located outside the building specifically, and we brought people in. We didn't want to just use the existing people. And they were charged with focusing on tying into the internet, the major POPs, all the way down to the consumer electronic devices and the software that went on it. So how do you get video on a broader scale? How do you get video to your tablets, PCs, et cetera, on an IP basis? Keep it secure, look at your business deals with all the content providers, and build a network. I think that's kind of right in the square of the things that you guys are looking at. So again, anywhere you guys want to ask questions, you can. So out of that came that we need a new software platform for these devices, consumer electronic devices, not just the devices that we own or lease. And they stepped back and they looked at Android. They looked at Android 5 years ago, wasn't what it is today. HTML5 wasn't what it is today. So it was some very tough decisions, and we decided to build our own open source software platform. It was very successful. We're deploying it now on our new products and services. It was so successful, people came and said, hey, I would like to have access to that software. And so we built a licensing program, and then we stepped back and said, if you want to compete on a global basis with platforms like Android, with services that coming from Amazon and some of these other providers, you need to go global, you need to go big with scale. So we decided to create this company, which is one of the companies we run, which is a software company that took this software, and we're now licensing it in open source format to the rest of the world, to our competitors, to people who may be disruptive in the technology world, and of course with the traditional telecom providers. It's very, very different. We stepped out of the box and said, we're going to spend X millions of dollars to create this, and we're going to give it away for free to everybody who wants it. What do you get back? You get the innovation, you get the platform, you get the scale. We integrate down into the silicon level with this software, and in order for the Intels and the Broadcoms and the M-Stars and the ST type SOC companies, they need scale. They need 10, 20, 30, 50 million units a year. They need hundreds of millions of units to be excited on this platform. And so that's how we get our benefit, is it's a global platform that multiple people will utilize, and everybody gets the benefits, including Comcast. And so that's one of the companies we run. We have offices and we have resources all over the world, and we're licensing this globally to around 140 companies right now, and it's being deployed into millions of units, with our forecast going into the hundreds of millions of units in a very, very short time frame. So with that kind of discussion of, hey, build the next IP video platform and the software, I'll kind of stop there and just see if you guys have any questions specifically on that, or if you have any direction you want to go with that.
I guess I personally, speaking for everyone too, what exactly was the, I didn't follow my side. What exactly was the operating system geared towards? Is it like distribution of the digital media, or how is that involved?
So it's a client-server infrastructure, but it's really focused on the endpoint, which is the customer premise device. So it can go on anywhere. It can go onto a phone, a tablet, a PC, but really focused on devices that are provided by the cable, telephone, and satellite operators, those set-top boxes. And also, it is, again, the server infrastructure to make sure that the services, cloud-based services that everybody's putting together, are available at a high rate, or at an efficient rate. And I'll use an example. Traditionally, software was done on these devices. Again, you guys really are probably familiar with the devices in the last 2 to 3 years. But if you go even back 5 or 6 years, traditionally, large blocks of software were done on multi-year, maybe a 2-year development cycle. And so if you wanted your software to come out in 2 years, you had to put your feature functionality in now. And by the time it was 2 years later, when it's ready to be deployed and hardened, your feature was out of date. And you never caught up. And so we needed to put a open source platform out there that you could change daily, weekly, monthly, whatever you want to do. And you could put feature functionality or fix bugs on the fly versus on these 2-year waterfall type cycles. So everybody's shifted over into an agile software development. As an example for that, Comcast had an idea that they said, hey, look, people still want to buy DVDs, but they want them on electronic format. And so we call it electronic sell-through, where you could watch a video on the television or on the PC, and you can click it, and they say, I can buy it. So it's not a novel idea. Other people have thought about it. So we said, hey, let's try it. And if we were in that original platform, we would have missed a cycle of the 2 years. We would have had to wait for another year to get in for the 2-year cycle. And so 3 years from now, maybe people don't even want to buy the digital format anymore. So we utilized this RDK software that we put together, and within a couple of months, we put this together, put it out, and within 2 weeks, Comcast outsold video distribution on those videos of Apple and Amazon combined. And that was feedback, and if it didn't go well, we would have shut it down, we would have pulled it off. But it's successful, so now we're driving it forward. And it gives you the ability to innovate on faster cycles. You can go on a monthly cycle versus on a multi-year cycle. And so with that is sometimes you don't get it right. And failure's fine as long as you can adapt and fix it on the fly, which you can with this platform. So it's dramatically different in the telecom space that used to do these big hardened releases, and now they're on the fly. Maybe they're not perfect, but you can fix them and rapidly innovate, feature functionality and fixes, etc. So it's dramatically different. And again, you said, what do you focus on? It's really on that piece that goes onto the CE device, but it also does the cloud-based server infrastructure, so you can do cloud services versus just things on those devices. So I don't know if that answered or rambled a little more than you needed. It's good? All right. So that's one of the aspects for the digital media world. And now a lot of companies are going into cloud DVR service, cloud streaming services, et cetera, whether it's IP or any other format. everybody's going to be streaming media. But the high value content is the one that you have to have a high level of protection, and you have to have a high level of reliability, and the business deals behind that are all connected. So if you want to get content from Viacom, if you want to get it from Disney, if you want to get it from NBC, if you want to get it from Fox, you have to have a very different distribution model than just scraping web content and putting it out there. So that's when I said we had to put an end-to-end infrastructure in place. We had to put that in place, which is much more than just streaming an IP video out on the web. So how does that relate to you guys? You're going into this new world. You're probably already thinking about this innovative way that you said, of course, that's how I would have done my software distribution from day one. I don't even know why you're up there talking. But the rest of the world, big companies who try to innovate, are not up to speed on this. You guys are going to be the ones who are going to bring them up to speed. And I think you guys have a huge opportunity to go either into a large company, medium company, or startup. And maybe I'll just go into some of the aspects of maybe why you would go into a large, maybe why you would go into a small, and kind of what you can bring. So if somebody just asked me, hey, Greenfield, what would you do if you got out of college? And I got a degree from this college here in this department. I would either go, no specific order, either into like a heavy-duty city, New York City, and go to a big company, medium company, get some of that experience, the process, the infrastructure of how does the financial aspects and how do the technology aspects work in a big company. And I think you'd be shocked about how slow it goes. There are some innovative companies, but still they have slow processes, et cetera. You might get a little bored, but stick there for a little while. Or I would go out to Silicon Valley where there's no rules. You may not even have an HR department. You may not even have a legal department. You just kind of run wild. You get together. Maybe you don't even know how to file for intellectual property, but you're having fun and you're cranking things out. And your exit strategy may be just to sell to somebody bigger, or do a round of funding, or to go public, et cetera. Now, the funny thing is, the big companies want Silicon Valley startup innovation concepts to come their way. And the Silicon Valley companies, when they want to go public or they want to do rounds of funding, they need adults, as they call it. They need somebody who's worked in a large company who knows the infrastructure, the processes, et cetera. So if you went to a large company or you went to a startup, there's no mistake there, because if you want to switch, both of those need the other's talents. And they need them in the school and the discipline that you're in right now. So startups are a lot funner, a lot riskier. And if you ever go into a startup and you're actually a founder of a startup, there's a couple of things that we usually advise is you need to make friends in the finance and probably in the legal world. So if you guys are technology based and you're doing something very creative or disruptive, et cetera, at some point you're going to go to get a round of funding. And in order to do that, you need to know about equity structure, et cetera. So you got to go find a good finance buddy. And then if you have intellectual property that you don't know how to protect, when you go to these VCs to get funding, et cetera, they do not do non-disclosure agreements traditionally. They say, you take the risk and you tell me what your good idea is. And so you're just telling them all of the ideas that you have that you've been working on for X amount of years. And they see a lot of these ideas, and a lot of them, they hear it and then they take it, not directly, but indirectly, and then maybe 6 months from now, somebody has that same idea and you're wondering why. So you do have to know how to protect your intellectual property and your assets, because that is a big valuation of your entity if you're doing a startup and you want to go get funding, et cetera. So at some point, during your careers, if you ever want to go into the startup world, I would say if you go into a big company or any other company, you should start stepping out and looking at a financial perspective, and don't get bored too much on the legal perspective, but just on the intellectual property perspective, or network and know people who know how to do that. Because if you ever go into startup mode, I've actually seen a lot of businesses acquaintances and companies that we've invested in where the founders don't have any idea how that works. And sometimes it doesn't work out so well for them. And some of these VCs have, at certain stages, actually oust the founders due to their equity structure and their ability to move people out. And so you really do have to protect yourself. At some point, you need to know about that. And even if you're a large company, you get more rounded by knowing maybe a financial perspective instead of just pure technology. And also from the intellectual property, you don't have to be a lawyer there. You can just pick up the phone and get one. But you should understand the ramifications of your great idea and filing for it and protecting it and making it yours. And that's an asset that you can sell. Nowadays, there's companies like Intellectual Ventures, if you want to look that up. It's a multi-billion-dollar intellectual property company. They don't sell anything. They don't, put any products out there. They buy intellectual property and they, what's the polite way to say it? They license it or they ask you to make payments to them. So sometimes they sue you too. So your intellectual property can be, your assets can be sold to these types of companies. You don't even have to go get distribution. You don't even have to sell your company. You can just sell your intellectual property. And it's very, very valuable these days. So again, I'll take a little pause again. Any direction? There we go.
So we hear lots about small startups having to do a pivot.
Right.
Could you talk about the importance of talent versus the idea, and when you're investing in a small company or a startup, are you looking at one more than the other?
Well, especially in California. California, as far as I know, even today, they do not really honor employment agreements. So it's very hard to keep that talent there. And so really the reason you traditionally buy a company, a small startup company, is there's one or two or three key people and you want to keep them. And so you can't do it, traditionally can't do an employment agreement that, quote, keeps them there. So you have to keep them there with equity, or you have to keep them with some big prize at the end. And you give them a big title and they feel important, but that wears off in around 6 months. But for the first couple of months, it's cool. So you buy it for the 2 or 3 people. When we look at startups and we look at small companies like that, we call it the mad scientist. So we want to see what one individual has driven this company, and that's the person we want to make sure we are keeping happy and keep on board. And traditionally, 2 or 3 people who are key, if that key mad scientist stays, they stay. He leaves, she leaves, they leave. And so you really have to make sure these people stay in some methodology. The other aspect is the intellectual property that has the value. The rest of it, it's nice, but it really boils down to the key management and what we call the mad scientist, who probably created the intellectual property and the intellectual property that's in there. Traditionally, startups don't have contracts, they don't have big deals, and they don't have finance, and they don't have money. The other things that you would, if you buy a medium-sized company, do they have long-term contracts that are valuable? Do they have revenue? Do they have cash, et cetera? All that's kind of the traditional, how do you assess a company, excuse me, is not valid. It comes down to 2 or 3 key people and the intellectual property. All right. That also can apply with large companies. So large companies have business units inside. I gave an example of within Comcast, we started a group and had them made it part of their jobs, their bonuses, et cetera, to be innovative, and don't let the rest of the company bother you until you have a full plan. We also do things like we have offices out in the Silicon Valley where we do have technology labs where companies come pitch us ideas on a weekly basis. We can either work with them to give them direction, we can take an equity position in them, we can get on the advisory boards or the boards, and then we have a full-fledged venture capital arm, again out in Silicon Valley and up in Philadelphia, New York, that we do go scour more from an investment perspective. The other one is more from a strategic perspective, and maybe how could that technology come in and help us with our network, with our products, with our services, et cetera. And it's kind of like an incubation lab versus a full VC. So, we have those type of arrangements. And then another way to spur innovation is, first of all, it's in our macro corporate goals that certain groups have to bring innovative solutions in, and if not, your bonus is affected. So it focuses directly right on the things that people care about. And also we have actually quite beneficial intellectual property filing incentives, and people can make quite a bit of money on filing those intellectual property aspects. So within a large company, not all of them are just slow methodology-based type processes. They also have innovation arms. They have arms that can step out and take risk. Our group happens to be one of those. We take almost every risky project. We kid around that no one else wanted the project, and that's when it comes to us. But we get to have fun, and failure is an option. If you fail continuous and never get anything over the goal line, you'll be terminated. But if you fail, you learn, you make it better, you put it out, get successful, failure is actually fine. And it's a very different thought process than it was 10 years ago. Failure is actually fine. In the technology world, you might say, wow, I'm running a network, how could failure be fine? It's how fast do you recover, how fast do you innovate to fix that, and if you have a couple of bumps along the way, that's fine, as long as you're going in the right direction. So, again, any other questions or direction? All right, I'll look at my couple of notes that I had here. Compliments of my kids. All right, so when we created the one entity, I talked about it, but we also created another entity, and it's conditional access licensing, and that does we licensed the Motorola technology, very broad license. Eventually that went to Google, and then it went to this company, Aris. And so our company was around 10 years ago at probably one of the worst relationships that we've had with somebody who provides a core technology to us. It was so bad when we tried to put new products and services out, we actually had to go ask them. And if they didn't feel like it, we couldn't put a new product or service out there. So things were pretty tough, and we were going to go kind of fight them, but then our group came in and says, why don't we kind of turn this around? And this is where thinking out of the box is acceptable now and then. So we said, instead of going head to toe kind of legal with them, years and years and tons of money, why don't we partner with them and bring them in closer? And at first people said, are you kidding? How could you, the people who are causing us problem, how could you partner with them and bring them in closer? And so we put a plan together, and we put it forward, and now we have a joint venture with them. It's probably one of the most successful joint ventures we have. It generates money, it's cash flow positive, it provides technology, and it provides products that probably have generated billions of dollars worth of in-kind value to our company as well as other companies within the United States and Canada and worldwide. So, it's all right to think out of the box and come in from a technology perspective as long as you have a plan. And again, that one failure may have not have been as acceptable, but if you run it correct and it's run by the right people, you can make bad situations into great situations. But you got to think out of the box now and then. And with a technology-based solution, it's easy to get logic to flow. Sometimes if it's just a marketing deal, it's a little bit tough. But if it's based on a technology, which is based on fact, again, you guys deal in the technology and sciences world, you can really put plans in place that can really change the way things are done with respect to people who probably don't understand the macro technology ramifications. And they actually welcome your new ideas to come in, etc. All right, so that was one example. The other one, the entity I talked about. So the skills that you guys have, I think, are very, very important in today's world. And never downplay that. As you're coming out, I think I looked at the stats. I think you guys have a pretty good stat record of graduating from here and getting a job, etc. But getting your first job is one thing. Finding out what gets you going and what makes you have fun, as well as some of the paycheck, etc., some of those things, is never sell yourself short. Even if you don't have quite the experience, just go for it. Think out of the box, go in there and explain why you're qualified. And if you're in a big company startup, I'd say mix it around a little bit. So what I do see is a lot of folks is they don't think they have the skill set, and what people are really looking for is your underlying foundation to learn and then to be a leader. So, I'm not saying be cocky about that, but go in there with a positive attitude, and I would go in with an aggressive attitude. And you'd be surprised, especially in big corporations, most people just kind of run the status quo. It's not a bad thing. There's big processes that have to go on that generate a lot of money and that take care of customer service, et cetera. But large companies are really looking, how do they grow? And so they do look for the innovation. They do look for you guys to bring in things like social media that, no offense to different generations, they say they get it, they don't get it. And they need you guys to come in here who get it. And the value you bring just for utilizing that and bring it, don't undervalue that. That is where you can get a job just like that. That is where you can take a leadership position. And you'll be surprised, the senior management team and the operating folks who will follow you if you have enough guts to step up and understand the value that you have with the social media parameters that are existing today. And I think in the next couple of years will be even more dramatic. So that's probably one thing that I have there to offer as a little advice. All right, any other, I can tangent around, but anything that would go into your past formats or anything like that?
Sure, I can throw out a couple for you. So, coming from Comcast, are you engaged in a battle for the living room? So, what are your views on where that's going?
Yeah, we are, whether it's a battle or whatever it is, but we're in the living room today. Everybody wants in the living room, and it's not that easy to get in the living room. So before you get into the living room, you have to go meet with all those content companies, and it's really, really a money thing. And it's sometimes a very, very large money thing for the content rights, et cetera. So getting into the living room, it's not just the TV, it's really not the living room. We look at it from a household perspective, internal, and we look at a household as outside too. But it starts with you live somewhere, and whether you're a family or an individual, we look at that as a household. We know you travel, and so your media has to be in the format and into the device that you want it to be on, whether it's a phone, tablet, et cetera. And you have to be able to take it to go, et cetera. Now, a lot of people like some of these packages that are out there that have the medium value content, and they say, wow, telephone cable or satellite operator charges me X amount of dollars, but in reality you get the high value content, including sports, etc. And then they say for $10 I can go get web access. It's the same. And it's really not the same. If this person who's ever providing that $10 service wants the Super Bowl rights, they have to pay the same amount of money to the content providers, etc. So there's a little discrepancy of the high value content of what we think we're selling versus you determine if it's high value or not. And I would bet everybody here, I would doubt you have a subscription service to one of these larger packages. I don't know why you would. You get your content on other devices, and you probably get most of it online, etc. So at some point, though, in your life, you're going to buy a 60, 70-inch TV, and you're going to want to see the Super Bowl. And so you'll have to make decisions then on the living room, and hopefully we're there for those. And because we provide the higher level of video packages, but in our networks we also provide the high-speed data, et cetera. So we come at those from both perspectives. So we need to be in your living room. We actually need to be in your house. Now, a lot of people want to do that. There's, every video distributor, the prime video distributors, cable, satellite, telephone, all want to be there, which is fine. It's very healthy to have competition. So it's ours to win or ours to lose, and we accept that battle. That's why we're doing some of these innovative processes, because we see companies like Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, they still have relevance, but they'll be there in some form. And if they each try to take a percentage of the distribution away, it's very, very critical to us that we fight for what we have or fight for new things. So the battle for the living room, I think, hasn't even started, in my opinion. I think 5 years from now, when everybody transitions over into an IP network, because the satellite company, the telephone operators and everybody, we use an MPEG, it's called an MPEG-2 or an MPEG-4 format. But when everything goes onto a common IP infrastructure and it rides over the internet, and in instances of Comcast, we have tens of thousands of private networks, so it's a private network or the internet. And the format structure is there to go onto a phone, tablet, PC, whatever it is. And you guys and everybody else doesn't just want it in the house, they want it everywhere, including international. I think that's when, and 5 years, it'll take 5 years to work out the content rights. That's when I do think the real battle will take place. And again, it's ours to keep winning, or I don't even want to say the L word. So I think it's going to heat up once the world goes pure IP. I think the content rights over the next 5 years, it will take that long to work out the content rights to go in the US, maybe North America, maybe global, because there's a real ladder structure of how you buy content, high value content. As an example, Netflix, and my kids ask me this, so Netflix makes some great content, they make some original content, and they kind of sit to me and say, why don't you have that? And so they didn't know that we're working on this deal with Sony. So Netflix doesn't even have the distribution rights to the Netflix created content, because that's not how the world works. If they just keep it for themselves, they'll never make money off any of their content. And the same as Comcast owns NBC Universal, and we sell it worldwide to everybody. That's the only way you make money on content. And so Netflix, I can't speak for them, but this is public knowledge. Netflix did a business distribution deal with Sony, and Sony can sell that content to anybody. And we just went into Sony, and like I said, it was a financial ramification, not a who gets it, who doesn't. And we just picked up, those the quote, the Netflix content is now being distributed by Sony, and now distributed by us to customers. And so the content, again, has a business model, has a scale model, and anybody can get it as long as you have a checkbook. And as long as you adhere to the rights of the content protection, and you adhere to the contract of where you can distribute it, et cetera. So a lot of that has to change. It's in the process. But traditionally, nobody has a real content advantage, because if you keep it just for yourself, you may make money on the distribution of other services, but you'll never make money off the content. The content has to go broad, it has to go global. So behind the scenes, the content rights, the distribution of an all IP network, and the capabilities to put it onto any device, which is either an app platform or a software platform, both of what Comcast is working on, to go onto your TVs and your phones, et cetera. I think that'll take a couple of years, and I think those three large components of the app UI, the content rights, and the IP network. When that happens, I think you'll see a very, very different game. And I think some of the large players will definitely be there. And it's not for the faint of heart for some of these folks. They'll be there, but they may not have the prime content, the prime shows, the sports, etc. Right? Question?
In a large company, how do you get partners to?
Sure, I'm supposed to repeat it. All right, there we go. You can nod if I got it right. In a large company, how do you get interdepartments to cooperate to do a common goal? Yeah. So first of all, it really starts with the culture and the leadership at top. Even though you're not talking to the CEO, you're not talking to who's the top 5 or 6 or 7 people who run the corporation, they set the culture for things like that. If they let it run amok, it's never going to work. And so that team usually starts at the top, and at least with Comcast, I can only speculate on some other companies. The top management team at Comcast is very experienced in what's going on with the networks, with the content, et cetera, and they don't accept, infighting, turf building, silo building, et cetera. To the point that if you're not a good actor, you're pretty much asked to leave. they'll give you a chance to get better. So it has to come all the way from the top, and then it goes down into the management ranks, et cetera. Now, how do you do that? It's just like politics. You know, you have to convince people your idea is better. In a large company, people say, great, you have all sorts of funding, you have all sorts of capital. And in reality, in the budgeting process, different groups are fighting for that capital. They're fighting for headcount. They're fighting to get people. I shouldn't say fighting. They're proposing and try to convince people. And so sometimes there's give and take. And that's just human nature. Politics isn't a bad thing. Constructive politics is a good thing. That's consensus among the group. And that's, again, what's fostered by a senior leadership team. Probably one of the reasons I've still stayed at Comcast for 20 years, when I've been able to invent myself and my group, et cetera, have a little fun, is the management team there is almost on the incredible state. You know, I've drank the Kool-Aid, so I'll say that. So, the companies run very well, and they don't let that kind of stuff happen. Whether it does, they give it a little while and then they fix it. It's not their job to do that, but the whole culture accepts that. If you're in a company, and I have seen companies like this, where it's all infighting, et cetera, my advice is leave the company tomorrow morning. You don't have time to put up with that, because at some point you're going to be collateral damage. And it's a bad feeling, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you ever come to that instance, try to fix it. You know, go tell somebody about it, try to fix it, but I wouldn't put up with it very long. That's just one of those companies you don't want to be there, and that company will not survive. It will implode from the inside, and my advice is you don't want to be there when it does. I don't know if it answered it, but that's just my perspective from one company's. All right?
We have a question that was tweeted in.
Sure.
Going back to the bundles that you were talking about, are there any plans for offering personalized pay-per-view channels? So I guess being able to pay for one channel and not all the other ones, and I guess going off of that, the restrictions that kept that from happening, or keeping that from happening?
Sure. Traditionally, that is based on the content providers. So I'm not going to get the exact numbers, but there's 4 very large companies that provide the high majority of the high and medium value content. So if you have an individual company that doesn't own other channels, you'll probably be able to buy that on an a la carte basis. And you'll probably be able to get it on the web or any other format on an individual basis. But when you go into the larger companies, they traditionally bundle their package that they sell to us, and we buy that content and we resell it out, and most of the times we're restricted on what we can do. So the issue is, so we look at statistics on a very, very aggregated basis, and Nielsen and other companies look at this, and they traditionally, anybody in here, if you're watching TV, probably has, they say it's under 20. It's under 20 shows that you watch all the time. The rest you'll surf through if you're bored, etc. But you only watch 20 channels, and there's some number like that. The difference is you're 20, you're 20, you're 20, you're 20. They're all different. Maybe there's some overlap on big sports events or popular shows, but History Channel versus the Military Channel versus the Weather Channel versus whatever. So the problem is we try to provide a large breadth when you go out to X millions of customers. And there's people, like you'll complain, you don't want the sports, and you'll say you need the sports, but you don't want the History Channel, and you'll say I don't like either of those, but I want to watch something else. And it's very, very difficult to put that out there to people, especially when the content providers are not allowing you to do it on a single basis. So if and when it does happen, the price for the high value content is actually going to be very, very expensive, and it's going to be dictated by the content providers. And so I do think it will happen again when I talked about the programming agreements in a couple of years, and the IP network and the user interfaces, et cetera, are all there. I think people will almost demand it. But it's a difficult thing in the entire chain to just change. I'd like it to change, but we like to give people what they want, but sometimes there's rules when people provide us content on what we'd have to adhere to. All right? Any other questions, or? It's a quiet group. Nobody asked about anything.
I, I saw a hand going up over there.
Ah, right there, sorry. Good.
I'm curious about the innovation. Is it innovation hub that's being built in
Yeah.
building that? Talk to us about that. Tell us how that plays into the sort of strategy in that region.
Sure, sure. So kind of tying into a couple of questions of, hey, are you in the fight for the living room, whether it's content, and I said over-the-top type IP distribution, et cetera. So we're looking at the trend of what customers and what people in general want on a U.S., North America, and a global basis. And our company is transitioning from a company that used to just buy low, repackage, and sell high, to we're running a high-speed, probably the largest high-speed data network in the world, one of the very larger video distributors. We're the second or third largest phone company in the U.S. And that's great. Those are business lines, and they're continuing. It's good products, et cetera. But we see the world changing in X amount of years from the likes of Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. I keep going back to those. But those are folks who are going to try to change the world. They're going to try to be disruptive. And so our company is shifting from the traditional model, and we put hardware out there with our networks, et cetera. We're shifting probably into a software/application-based company. And in order to do that, we opened up offices. Again, I talked to the 2 offices in Silicon Valley, one more investment-based, and another one more is an incubation innovation center where people can come in, and if they need equity, they don't have to go through this crazy process if it helps us in our network, et cetera. So then when you get into the Philadelphia side, is through acquisition, through hiring, et cetera, we are going from 0 to thousands of software engineers, application engineers, platform engineers. Somebody has to know about Blink. What is Blink? What is, the software platforms and the applications, the iOS, the Androids, the Samsung smart TVs. Samsung talks about putting out an operating system to try to rival Android and iOS. And we deem that we have to be there. It's not we should be there. We have to be there. And our products and services have to be available. We are going to fight for the living room, which is also inside and outside. And so that center is really to see over the next couple of years our ramp up of being in the new world and being relative in that new world. And so we're probably going to hire thousands of, I don't want to just say engineers, but more technology and web-based technologies personnel to staff that. I mean, that's going to be our innovation center. And of course, there's going to be a little bit of marketing aspects to show people what we're doing. But, once you get off of that floor, or once you get out of the lobby, these people are doing jobs, and they're doing iOS, they're doing Android, they're doing apps. They're creating those things, the example I gave you, such as the electronic sell-through. There was a team that says, hey, others are doing it, why can't we do this better? We have 20-some million customers who watch video all day. 8 hours a day is the average video viewing for television for customers out there. And so why don't they want it? Why can't we captivate that? Here's an example. Through our user interface that we just put out there, which is we call the X1 platform, which is based on that software I talked about. So features are coming in there quick. It's got cloud DVR, et cetera. And it takes a new box, and it has a high-speed internet connection to it, and it has a video connection, and it brings some of the web apps in it, et cetera. On that platform, on a monthly basis, we have multi-billion views. I don't want to tell you the exact number because we're filming here, but and that is probably only put out to less than 10% of our footprint. That's a new platform we put out. So less than 10% of that is doing multi-billions of views. And we step back and say, that's more than most of the websites out there. How do we take advantage of it? And you can't take advantage of it the traditional methodology. You have to bring kind of the global web scale thought process to that. And so what can you do with X billions of views per month? I think you can do a lot. Do you want to flood it with advertising? No, customers don't like that. But if you got a penny per ad, that would be pretty cool. So we have a little dilemma to think through there. But those are the types of things that Innovation Center is going to look at. Getting onto the platforms, doing innovation like that electronic sell-through, doing innovation like, what do you do with all these views? Is there anything you can do to monetize? Or is it to make a better experience for the customer? Maybe it's too many views. Maybe it's too hard to get through the menuing system. Maybe you need to cut it down. So there's a lot of things that are dramatically different than just turning on your TV and changing channel and getting an ad that's inserted in the regular television program. It's dramatically different. We have screen and screen. We have apps that then tie to your Twitter account, that tie to some of your other online accounts, where you can socially communicate about that television show. We're working with the programmers to give us metadata, which is information on that television show that we can send around to those other platforms. And so that's what that Innovation Center is going to drive. And those are some of the areas we think we're going to have to be in. We're taking it very serious enough to build a 50-story building and house it with people. So you don't have to wait till that's up and running. I would suggest you go, take the great minds here and give Comcast a knock at the door. Probably something for you to do there. Right? Good question. Thanks.
We have another Twitter question.
Sure.
Is there any pressure to monitor customers in order to control content privacy? And does Comcast currently monitor them in any way?
Now, we are governed under state, local, federal, all sorts of laws about privacy, and we take that extremely serious, and we abide by those laws. And so what the rest of the world can do, whether you're inserting cookies and you're gathering information, we do not. That is not something we're allowed to do. There are, we do watch and get ratings and viewing habits from companies like Nielsen, et cetera, and we do look at our network infrastructure. And so we do have certain things. It's all on an aggregate. It's all on a, not a customer base, never on a customer base. If you want to call the government and have them relax that, we could do kind of what the web does, but that's not the way it works today.
And I just realized I misread the question, but it kind of ties in with that. It's actually about piracy. So.
All right. So piracy, the way it works with our business arrangements with the content, especially the high-value content, we're responsible for keeping that secure. That's one of the things, the one company that we do run, Cal, does the content protection for the video that's sent out today. And it's never been hacked, it's never been broken in quite a few years. And it's a very, very high level of security, higher than any DRM or, the web is, some of the web content protection is pretty easily worked around, I'll just say that. This does not have the ability to work around. And when you have a secure network like that, the content providers know that when you distribute content, they're going to get paid. You're going to get paid, and they're going to get paid. And it really ties to the financial model. So privacy is an issue. We have, I don't want to give you the real number, but thousands of attacks on our network on a daily basis, actually much less than that. And every once in a while, somebody tries to hack into a content protection system, and we are very diligent about protecting that, et cetera. And the reason for that is because we have contracts with our content providers, and also our business model is based on that. If all of a sudden everybody got it free, why would they pay for it? It's a very simple concept. Maybe you don't like to hear that, but that's just how it works. Does that get close to answering privacy?
Yeah.
Or piracy?
Yeah, both, I think. So.
Gotcha.
This one's my personal question. It sounded like, from your perspective, the advantage to a bigger company is resource, and the advantage to like a startup is innovation. Do you see with Comcast constantly growing with acquisitions and everything? You talked about NBC and Time Warner. Do you see?
I didn't talk about Time Warner, and I can't.
But do you see that being an issue for Comcast in the future of just growing too big and getting too far away from the innovation?
First of all, I would say no. And the first thing with innovation in a big company, it is possible to do. And I will say this, if a company's doing good, they will probably always put money out there for innovation, et cetera. Our company's doing pretty well right now, so we're right in that mode. When companies have problems, they really try to tighten up, and maybe they don't do it correct, and they stifle innovation, and they probably put themselves into a deeper dive by not doing the innovation that's going to get them out of the dive. So we've had our ups and downs, and we've found out that even when times get a little flat, that is not the time you hold back on innovation, new products, et cetera. It's actually the time to accelerate it, to try to keep it going. So in the media world, in the distribution world, the telecommunications world, you do need some sort of scale. We ask the same kind of questions about Google, about those type of companies. Are they too big? Now, if you ever ask the Google person, they say, we're just warming up. But I mean, you do need scale to compete in this world, and you do need scale when you're talking networks, content distribution, et cetera. So the scale that we need is big for the sake of big does not work. That's usually a recipe for disaster. There has to be a business plan. There has to be a basis. So we're expanding in commercial businesses, services, and one of the strategies when we expand through acquisition, et cetera, is not just the traditional video services, but it's the new things that we're putting out there, which are the commercial, small, medium, large company, even direct fiber connections, massive data moving around, managing databases, et cetera. So we actually feel that you do need to get to a certain scale, and you do have to have a certain level of clout when you're looking to acquire content, et cetera. And traditionally, the way the content as anything sold in the world is the more you buy, the better rate you get. So if you're buying it at 1 million versus at 30 million, it's a dramatically different scale. And we pass that on to our customers, and then we can compete better. Again, I don't know if that answered enough. You can say no. Again, I could have taken a tangent and just...
you did great. Yeah, you covered it. But that's pretty much going to put us at the end of the hour. So
Right.
If everyone could join me in thanking Steve for coming out, and thank you all for
Thanks.
coming.
So now I have the hook.